I'm Jerika. I use she, her.
I'm Air. I use he, him.
And I'm Embers Tide. I use he, him. And this is Insight.
And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions to retrieve the treasure of wisdom. Welcome to Insight Check. It's lovely to have you.
Thanks. Pull up a seat. We've stoked a warm fire. I've got cocoa.
Or maybe iced tea and a cool breeze. We're equal opportunity season imaginers.
Provided there's a liquid involved, we're totally interested.
Same. What a good statement.
An altogether excellent utterance of words.
So how y'all doing?
Yeah, a little tired, but okay.
Yeah, that.
Welcome to Insight Check, where we're all tired all the time.
Yes.
I'm pretty good. I'm excited to get a few moments to marinate in the simmering sauces of D&D for a little bit. Talk to y'all fine people, and thought maybe we could do a little bit of the classic Q's and A's.
Surely.
This evening.
Where should we start?
Well, I'd say nothing kicks off a quality Q&A session like something totally different that then requires us to segue into Q&As.
Love it.
I typically would go with a dungeon crawl, but that's just me.
I'd recommend the dungeon crawl this evening. It's excellent. Very fresh.
Oh, Jay, this'll teach you. This'll teach you.
Who has a dungeon crawl that they would like to bring forward today?
Well, I am not often in the business of actually getting to play my favorite game, that being Dungeons & Dragons, but this past few weeks has been the exception to that rule. I've actually been able to play some homebrew D&D, and it's been good.
That's super good.
It's even been better than good.
What character are you playing?
Well, the character's a rogue, but not like most rogues you might see just walking down the streets of Faerun. Unless you were looking at the ground, because my character is a bat, and he's like 6 inches tall.
Oh, yes.
Because we playing small folk up in here.
Up in here.
And what is small folk? Embers? I have no idea.
You're gonna make me small my folk.
Folk are getting so small. So Small Folk is a homebrew brainchild of Lipacheski and the inimitable Jay, your DM. They got off on a kick where they said, hey, let's make a pint-sized, mouse-sized adventure universe. And certainly not the first to do it, but hey, I'll say it. They're the best to do it.
Hey.
Really.
There is zero competition.
With all my credibility, that's what I'm saying. But they did a great job of building out classes, building out narrative, building out a story of a little universe. And I am a Batfolk rogue, and I play with my biological real-life brother, Casey Drones, and he is my non-biological but small folk real life brother, a little tiny tree frog cleric
named Abinstern.
Yeah, and we're joined by Shiny Batgirl, who is a snail named Long Sparkly Trail and is awesome.
Frequently cosplays.
Yes, in the finest of fashions. We've got Cal Drennan, we've got McBoots, we've got Lipacheski doing the DM work, and it is an awesome group. And we have an amazing show program master.
Who is it?
You might have heard of her.
Tell me more.
So Jerika actually mans the controls with the skill.
Well, I would say she womans the controls, but potato.
Oh god, just like walking around with the lights off and you're half asleep and just bam, right into the door frame.
Anyway.
Nose first. So Jerika rules the controls like an intergalactic starship commander. It's amazing.
named Sonek Mauve.
I was going to say, it's funny you should mention that. That leads into my dungeon crawl, but we'll come back to that later.
Well, let's get back to it soon. Anyway, so we are a party who is essentially helping to safely shepherd a mouse tradesman through this dangerous tunnel because he's trying to secure a trade deal with this monastic group of holy honeymakers. And we had our first battle a couple sessions ago. In this session, we actually reached our target location. We smooth talked our way in, and I got to finish the journey of this little compatriot that I found along the way, the ghost of a mouse who hundreds of years ago or hundreds of generations ago was trying to take some honey to go sell for this group. Never made it, sadly. So I brought her home. So Willow's back home, and we are now seeing if we can help this monastic group of honeymakers because their operation is dying. Their habitat is freezing, and they don't know why. But the things are looking pretty dire. So when we pick things back up in August, we're probably going to see the culmination of that journey. I'm very excited. Like, this last session really got me sucked in. Like, seeing that conflict really, to me, emphasized the severity of what we were doing, because it had been kind of like it'd been like a travel setting, right? Like, you come upon a battle, you keep traveling, you find a safe place to sleep, and then you keep traveling. It's a long journey. Now that we've reached it and we see the next layer of that conflict, I am totally sucked in and game. And it's a great thing to play with all these folks. It's a really good group.
Yes, it's a very good group. And if you're interested, the next Table 1 game in the Lavender Lone setting is going to be August 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/InsightCheckPod. If you didn't know we had a Twitch channel, surprise, we do.
When you least expect it, bam, Twitch. And so, yeah, we stream it live and host it later, and we release it as a podcast after that.
Yes. We have most of the production team right here, don't we?
There are a bunch of layabouts. But yeah, it's a small little kind of found family game, and I love it.
Me too.
And that's my dungeon crawl.
Aaron, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that our Powered by the Apocalypse-based Star Trek game continues unabated, and the last game was just lovely, and I enjoyed it. And Jerika is the captain of that as well.
Yes. Just the ship. The USS Chonker.
The
Steaming through the universe.
I will say that I basically, the best part about it is I can just watch old episodes of Star Trek and then just rip off the episode to create a session. And so in this session, like a group of refugees seeking asylum come up to the Chonker and hail them asking for this. And then before they can kind of get a word in edgewise, they're attacked by a pursuing force, and they take shelter in a gas giant that scrambles all their sensors. And it was like, well, in the show, they, rushed after them to save them. That's what the players will do. Nope. Because Jerika's like, well, if it's scrambling our sensors and it's scrambling their sensors, it's just a needle in a haystack. We'll just wait out here till someone comes out. And I sat there thinking, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yes. It's like that LeVar Burton meme where you're like, yeah. Anyway. Yes, I really like this game too, and I'm so glad, Air, that you gave me the opportunity to manifest my ultimate dream, which is to have a list of all the contents of everyone's closet on a starship.
Yeah, it got, we decided that almost the ship had an untold number of cargo bays because every closet counts as a cargo bay, and as such would be the purview of the captain to know the content stored therein. Yeah, so our fashion forward commanding officer now knows
what everybody's wearing this season. Yeah.
Yes. My other dungeon crawl is related to the other game I'm in with Jerika.
It's like I like playing games with you.
Yeah. Hey, how about that?
Hey.
Run by RDMJ, where in our last session, I got to marry Matt Will Jackson. That was a lot of fun.
I got to be surly about it.
Well, really, if you're gonna grab up a boy like that, there's gonna be some people who are a little mad, But such is the way.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard out there. It's hard out there for a tender heart. What can I tell you?
But just don't hate that player. You can only hate the game.
But not Dungeons and Dragons. Pick another game. This is the game we love.
What was the most rewarding part about marrying Matt Will Jackson for you?
Whoa.
When the cleric who was marrying us tried to cast the ceremony ritual and he counterspelled it.
That was nice. That was good flavor. It's exactly what you want at your wedding.
Yeah. For the groom to step out at you right at the end. Yeah. Left at the altar after the person actually showed up initially. That's a new level of cold. You know what? Actually, now that we're at this critical juncture, I think I'm out.
After he kissed
Everybody
you.
enjoy the buffet. Yeah, true.
Indeed.
True. And I read him a poem.
It was a good poem, by the way.
The reason I don't remember anything else from the session is I was probably spending pretty much all my time trying to write it. Anywho.
Yeah.
Yeah. D&D and tabletop RPGs are fun. People, you should give them a shot.
If you haven't thought much about it, please consider it, won't you?
Yeah. Submitted for your approval.
Right.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Also, how the hell did you find us? We are everywhere.
You're a Legion? I mean, I've heard that we're Legion.
Have you heard about our multitudes? Let me tell you about our multitudes.
That's my dungeon crawl. Hey, a lot of people play D&D.
It's pretty fun.
Do we want to hit off some cues and then maybe knock him down with some A's?
Especially if we were going to sound a lot more excited about it.
Okay, let's do it. It's time for some Q's and A's.
I've got a fever, and the only cure is questions about D&D.
What's the name of this fever, Embers?
I'm gonna let you know. Gotta think of a good one.
Filth fever, I think.
What?
Contagion.
What?
No.
The contagion
Gross.
spell has all the effects have names. Yes, filth fever.
Gross.
A raging fever sweeps through the creature's body. Disadvantage on strength checks, strength saving throws, and attack rolls that use
I'd
strength.
rather have blight.
There's also blinding sickness, flesh rot, mind fever, seizure, and to top it all off, slimy doom.
That one.
That's actually the worst one. That one stuns you like permanently or something every time you take damage.
Oh boy.
Anywho, so D&D is fun spells. Just now you know.
Slimy Doom. Somebody wrote that.
Yep.
And that person, I owe them a beverage of their choice.
Are there spell components involved in the spell?
Ooh. And are they slime?
And are they slime?
No, it's only verbal and somatic. You
Well,
don't even have to provide your own slime.
opportunity.
A pound of flesh if you want flesh rot. A mote of mind fire if you want mind
What?
fire.
Where do you get mind fire?
I'm from the mind.
No,
call,
you gotta
Eric.
go to Whole Foods. It's really expensive.
Yeah. You don't want any of. You want the non-GMO mind fire. You don't want
like the Trader Jose's cantina mind fire.
Mind spots on my mind fire. Leave me the birds and the bees, please. So questions.
Hey, questions. I love it. Okay, great.
You got questions. We got answers. We've collected the questions that you had, and now we have them. And we're going to...
Thank you. These are all coming from our dear community members in our Discord. Thank you so much, one and all, for teeing us off with these. It's been a while since we've done a community grab bag. So we are
Or
now
as
gonna
Air calls it,
grab the community by the bag. Yeah.
it still hurts.
It's still bad.
I feel like it just gave me slimy doom.
Oh, listen.
So
you got to be safe out
if
there.
you are interested in getting closer to us, not physically, you can also join our Discord, and you can find that information from our Twitter, twitter.com/InsightCheckPod. Look it up. Anyway.
Yeah.
The first question comes from Matt Will Jackson.
Heard of him.
I think most DMs use the tool of a cinematic aside to make the players consider events happening elsewhere in the world, but what are players supposed to do with that information when their characters certainly don't know it's happening? What a good question.
I think the fear is that it's something that might invite metagaming.
Eric, could you give an example of what this would entail?
So I can give an example, and I can also do a little bit of what this inspired in me to try to run a session that would fix it. An example would be if anyone ever saw the Arc of the Mad Mage arc of Acquisitions Incorporated. Chris Perkins had a group of assassins following the party. So he would do these asides where several rooms back in the dungeon is where the enemies are kind of looking around and seeing the remains of monsters that have been slain by the Acking crew and whatnot. So that when they, came to the final room and blah, 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 and all this craziness was happening, when the assassins attacked, they didn't know it was coming, but it gave them a chance to psychologically prepare, even though their characters were going to get the jump on them. So it kind of ramped up the tension. It kind of, it foreshadowed, the final conflict and whatnot. So it was a good dramatic tool. I do think that there can be a problem there if you have players who have trouble separating character knowledge and player knowledge. And
I played with a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old this week. I would say they're not very good at that.
Yeah, I should imagine compartmentalization is not their super strongest suit.
No.
They're still trying to figure out being one person, let alone two. So, I actually was inspired by this question. I was planning a one-shot, which I realized was too close to one I already ran, but the idea would be to open it with a narrative bit that's jumped forward in time. And it's the person that's narrating is describing the adventure that happened, so that you can set some seeds of obviously something shady happened here. If, adventurers were coming into this place back in the day and there's this person left to tell the tale. So you can do some foreshadowing there, but it's set enough distant in time that no matter kind of what they do in that adventure, there is a way for this person to still be there in future. Like there's enough distance temporally to not affect anything of the narration, and it also kind of keyed off the twist ending I had planned.
Well, it also is a fun psychological effect because your players, even when they're going to do a good job separating player from character knowledge, they're still going to be running these little internal calculations in their heads about how we get from here to there. And so you can actually build in more twists that make those calculations harder. And progressively they start thinking more and more like, well, how are we going to get from here to there? And that can be a cool tension.
I also wondered, it was going to be a tavern owner who's fallen on hard times, telling them about the night that everything went wrong kind of thing. So they were obviously there. So it's an immediate test of the characters are like, I can break the entire world if I kill this lady right now. But that can also spark the narrative off in a different direction. And I kind of planned for both of those scenarios.
Yeah.
Reminds me of one of my favorite movies of all time, Raising Arizona.
Never seen it.
It's a very early Coen Brothers movie, and it stars Nicolas Cage.
Oh, no.
A very young Nicolas Cage. John Goodman.
Who's Arizona, though?
Arizona, I don't want to spoil it, but Arizona's a baby who gets kidnapped.
Oh, no.
it's a comedy. It's hilarious. But there's this villain, there's this evil biker bounty hunter who's just terrifying. And there are all of these little vignette scenes that track him and show what he does in different circumstances just to build his animus and his sort of the vileness of his character, but also to show these bizarre, like surreal outtakes of his past, which are kind of like MacGuffins, but it builds up a lot of character and it like transports you very effectively. For me, it builds a lot of tension.
I would say it's kind of maybe the reverse of the Saga comic series that follows this couple and as they like build their family and they go find their family. But there is this bounty hunter that follows them. But I would say that his sort of vignettes actually like humanize him more a little bit. I don't know. Does having a Drider for an ex-girlfriend humanize you? I don't know. But I think that having that extra sort of outside perspective in this very sort of emotional connection that the couple has because they're on two different sides of a war and things get very tense is interesting, I think, for the narrative. Anyway, there you go. Words, I said them. I would say generally with flashbacks or flash forwards or what have you, asides that characters aren't supposed to know, Jerika's general advice is to forget they ever happened. Because either you're going to change it and you're not going to know how to do that anyway, or you're not going to change it and the DM will just have to say it again for you.
But in the best case, it builds that tension and expectation or that cognitive dissonance.
Tension. It's just stress. I don't want stress in my D&D. Come on. Tensions mention.
There's your answer. Tension mention.
Here's a somewhat related question from No Tom Toulouse-Lautrec.
Not a single Tom.
How do you like to deal with moments where a player knows far more about a subject than you do? And that's basically the question.
So like if you're DMing and one of your players has an advanced degree in, I don't know, blacksmithing,
library science.
Exactly.
And you go to a library.
And you roll an investigation check to find the book you want, and you'll be like, "No, I know how to do that."
You know what? That would be under Dewey 240. Okay, I'm gonna go right to that shelf and grab that religious book.
Hey, like that for a roll. I want to do this.
I had this happen in the Star Trek game. I had an episode where they fall upon an ancient civilization's booby trap where they get locked in daydreams related to things of their past. So I asked every player for their heroes or important people from their past, their character's past, obviously. And so Drunk Phytologist, who's been on the show, gave me a bunch of famous biologists and botanists that her character, who's also a biologist and a scientist, like a xenobiologist, is a big fan of. So I was like, Maz, they were playing a Klingon. They gave me Kalas, who's the big Klingon famous mytho-historical warrior. Jerika gave me her former mentor. I had to look up all of these awesome biologists who've done pioneering work, but I was like, how do I relate this to the game? So I looked up something, I can't even remember what it was, but I got it completely wrong. I was like, yeah, she looks over your shoulder and says, ooh, this terrible thing that's happening to the crew is not entirely unlike this scientific principle. And DP, bless her soul, I could feel her reaching for my hand to pat it gently through Discord. Oh honey, no, that's not how that works at all. I was like, listen, I took a shot. You a bunch of real scientists. I don't know science. Anyway, so yeah, you know what?
I mean, you can
roll with it.
roll with it. You could always throw the wizard did it at them. It's like, no, in this world, horses don't kick, so they don't do much damage. So they're pacifists.
Pacifists. They've all there was a treaty of Horsai, and
Yes.
20,000 years ago, and all the horses aren't allowed to do violence.
In the palatial walls of Horse High.
Yes, indeed.
Hey, horse, attack that soldier.
Nay.
Hey.
But they all really like looking at themselves, so they made a big hall of mirrors. Anyway.
Right, and they look right in that mirror and they say, "Hey."
Hey.
Oh boy. Great, love it. All right, cool.
Anywho, I think you have to. You can walk into a situation where there's no easy way out. Like you can walk in by accident and not know that a player has that kind of in-depth knowledge. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can help yourself as a DM by covering some of this in the pre-game. If you're going to be able to get in touch with your players before you start, learn about their characters and their characters' backgrounds. Because if it's not in the character's background, but it is in the player's real life background, you as a DM have the capability to sidebar and say, this is just focused on the player knowledge. We're going to try to roll with this. If that's an issue, we can work on it offline and we can come back and course correct. But right now, the DM, I kind of know what your player knows based on what we've talked about. What your character knows, rather, based on what we've talked about as player and DM. Sometimes you got to roll with it, though. I mean, sometimes you as a DM can always say, okay, it is as you say, if it's not a big deal, or if it's critical to the narrative, you can say, this is how we're going to play this. This is how we're going to do this. It's
fantasy science.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's really what Star Trek kind of is at the end of the day. I will say that's what Drunk Fido did. She basically said, well, it would be kind of maybe more like this, and then went into a long explanation about science stuff that, again, I had no chance of understanding. But at the end of it, I was like, yeah, she said all that.
That happened in character.
Okay, yeah. She says that stuff. Okay, great. It works. Great, perfect.
Right, and the game continued, right? Like it all was well.
Now I have a really cool idea for a character.
Pacifist horseman? Or horse person, I should say.
No. And I would have to find a DM who would let me play this because it's a little bit off. But a librarian druid who their grove is the library. And they can only turn into animals they've seen in books. And that could be like weird-ass lion guy who's not really a lion. Or crazy elephant man, which isn't a man at all.
Druids, I guess they're okay with... Are druids okay with books?
I would think that there might be a world or scenario in which a druid might see their influence extend past the life of the tree into things that have been done with the tree after...
So they wouldn't be like, why are you handing me this binding of corpse shavings?
I mean, I think typically yes, but I like playing atypical characters.
Well, I mean, trees don't.
I mean, it's the bounty of the tree. Like, it gave itself to inhabit this new form and provide us knowledge in easily transportable tiny little
You're already boxes. RP in the character right now.
It's a druid who only learns spells from spell books that are made of linen and other textiles.
Could be.
I like it.
No, I think that's so cool. I like that a lot.
See, now I gotta kill Prue.
Well, I mean, Jay will do that. Don't worry about that part.
Oh yeah, probably. The next question we have is from Ooze the Muse.
I know him.
Bringer of the slimy doom.
I wrote him, I recorded him a song today.
Hey.
Best items to shake up your campaign that aren't a deck of many things? Question mark? What a great question. I would say a cursed weapon. I've dealt with at least two very memorable ones of these. And it causes a lot of inter-party conflict. So if that's what you're looking for.
You can also have like items of incredible value that are being sought after, like Maltese Falcon style or Hope Diamond style.
And then you have like people after you. Ooh,
exactly.
like
and like you have this choice. Do you try to fence this thing? Do you try to return it to its owner? Even if you know who that party is, it can introduce a whole bunch of different sets of questions and calculations for the party. And you can use it to introduce any kind of conflict or antagonist or change in the universe that you want.
Indeed.
Here's like, speaking of, sentient weapons, a famous one, the Sword of Kos, Kos the Bloody-Handed, hater of Vecna. Here's a fun bit. If the sword isn't bathed in blood within 1 minute of being drawn from its scabbard, the wielder must make a DC 15 charisma saving throw. On a successful save, the wielder takes 3d6 psychic damage. On a failed save, the wielder is dominated by the sword, and the sword demands to be bathed in blood. The spell's effect only ends when the sword's demand is met. That is the most a literal edgelord is this sword. Like, dear God.
2 edges, perhaps.
2 edges, possibly. Perhaps 3. Maybe it's a multi-dimensional sword. We don't know. It's
It's got edges in all dimensions.
But what we can say for certain is no little bit of blood. You can't just put blood on it. You have to soak this sucker.
Bathe is the word.
Yeah, you need to get the blood deep in there, right into the curve, the fuller, the whole bit.
Get the sous vide in there and just let it run.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of items do you like, Embers, for creating drama?
I like those items of larger than party influence, like the high value items or a cursed item or an item that has some political significance or some tie to power. So like once you have it, it's kind of like a one ring kind of thing, I guess, if you wanted to boil it all down to an archetype. But like just by them having this thing, they're inviting conflict. They're brought into intrigue and espionage, and they all of a sudden have to put stuff on hold because the forces at work now are much greater than whatever they were dealing with before. I also think you can, on the total flip side of that, if you want to shake it up, I believe personally that experiences are better than things. So if you're willing to go outside of items, you could do things like the whole Fifth Element kind of thing where you go to like an opera, or you're invited to a special getaway or event. That's kind of a classic trope, I guess, but it pulls them away. If you want to go to specific items, weapons are good. I like items that have some sort of sentience, like that cursed sword. So like you could have, like, remember the Tribbles episode of Star Trek where you just have this
How
kind
can
of...
I forget?
Right, so you have this like doomsday clock basically of these things that keep replicating. You can create the same kind of thing in an item, and it's like this persistent drip of conflict that's not related to your party's greater narrative arc, but eventually you got to deal with it. And I like those things that start small and eventually snowball into potentially catastrophic consequences.
I do like the cursed item thing. I like items that like are a ticking time bomb, but are in the DM's purview. So, like for example, the Orb of Dragonkind, which is the most fantasy fucking name for anything ever, has the spirit of an ancient evil dragon in it. But basically, if you try to attune to it, you have to make a DC 15 charisma check. On a success, you get to control it, but on a failure, you become charmed by it. You can't voluntarily stop being attuned to it, and it can cast suggestion on you at will. So, and then once it'll suggest things like killing particular people, freeing the dragon spirit from the orb, spreading suffering in the world, advancing the worship of Tiamat, or something else the GM decides. So basically at any point, if you need to spice something up, or if you want to like kind of pull out this wild card loose cannon thing, you can have it cast suggestion on the character and wrap it into whatever's happening narratively. And all of a sudden they're betraying the party, or they're running off and doing something completely at odds with what everyone else is doing. So it gives a lot of like kind of mechanical ways to just take any one party member and make them an unknown element, an unknown value.
I really like items that have names on them. Like so-and-so's thus and such. Because then you both want to know who so-and-so is. If you don't already, I think it's sometimes better if you're like, oh no, this is Vecna's eye, or this is so-and-so's thus and such. This is Rosie's staff, or whatever. Because then, like, you have like a entity associated with it that you kind of have some knowledge of, which I think is really cool.
I agree. I'm much more curious and fascinated by the, like, C-list or D-list famous named items. For some reason, I'm just much more drawn to the minutia of like some second or third tier hero or villain's escapades. Like Vecna, Tiamat, Baphomet, Avernus, whatever. Not to knock them, they're great, but I love the local. I love the small. I love the stuff that the DM is just completely fabricating. Like,
why is Jerika's ring important? Why do we care?
Question answered.
Our next question comes from Ooze the Muse.
Him again.
Appropriately named.
Best ways to instill a sense of urgency in players, or a sense of, this is really important, you really need to nail this. I would say I would take a note from Jerry Holkins' DM handbook and have sort of a melody for each of the players that you return to. So, like, Rosie has the Homeward Star, Cthulhu has sort of like the Sanguilith, Dinar has the sort of like Vars stuff, and Walnut has EPA stuff, and now it's sort of like Brahma stuff too. So, when you are touching on those topics, it seems like those are the more important sort of serious scenes, if you will. So you can do it narratively in that respect. There's probably other ways to do it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could conversely, you could take a cue from the Chris Perkins school of DMing, and you can start penalizing the character sheets. You can start reducing maximum hit points as time goes on, or if things fail, and start making permanent changes or semi-permanent changes to a player's character. That will get attention very quickly and get interest and focus pretty honed in, I think. Like, I think back to the Acquisitions Incorporated Death Curse arc, where like Jim Dark Magic's max hit points kept going lower and lower, and as a wizard it was getting almost farcical how easy he was to kill. For me as a listener, that worked. I was kind of like, it was like this ticking clock, and you saw this resource you had just wasting away. And I don't know, psychologically, the concept of loss and losing something stings way more than maybe the threat of not winning a prize or gaining wealth of some kind.
I do like in that how quickly I like and fear how quickly you immediately moved into an Omen drawn mindset of losing a resource as a reference to just dwindling HP.
Appropriate.
That was absolutely, yeah.
Gotta watch the balance sheet.
Yep. I'm just gonna like straight up just steal from Jay, because he had an excellent answer to this question actually in our Discord, saying how it's like Scott McCloud in Understanding Comics says, comic creator, the most powerful thing that they have control of is time. It's the same for the DM. You can push a moment or you can slow things down just via narration. Okay, we're about to do this plan. Are you all sure on what you want to do? Is a great way to slow things down, says Jay.
Sure.
Similarly, the fires are spreading and people will soon be trapped. What do you do? Is a good way to hurry things up. Just constantly letting players know that the world is moving regardless of their actions, and if they always take time to plan, things should backfire. They might have a plan just in time to realize that the thing they had the plan about is no longer the case.
Yeah, I mean, just to keep going through the top 40 hits, Matthew Mercer is also really good as a DM at implying or dictating a sense of urgency and time. Like he'll say, this door is closing. You have till the end of your turn. Or you guys have to decide what you're going to do. Like, time's running out. You got to tell me. And the players at the table might be going back and forth. And he is very artful at interjecting at the right time and being like, guys, I got to know. You got to tell me. This is it.
I just heard an example of this. I'm catching up on Critical Role, and they had just gone off and did a whole other arc for a whole other character, and they were then coming back and making their way back along where they had traveled before. I'm trying to keep this as unspoilery as possible, and had found that another character's hometown had kind of been ransacked and loved ones are missing and whatnot. And at the end of the session, when Matt kind of draws it to a close, he says, just think, if you had have gone this way instead of that way, you would have been here when all this happened.
Oh, boy.
And drops it. And, you can see just the players are like, oh, it's true. We could have stopped this. And, like, who knows if that was true or not? But, he keeps such a firm sense of in-game time that you don't doubt it for a second.
It's pretty amazing when those moments, because those moments can be episodes and sessions in the making. And this is not a skill that only your celebrity DMs can do. It's very accessible to go as a DM and kind of recap to yourself in your off time with a few minutes what's happened in those sessions and maybe what else has been going on in the world. And you don't have to have it planned or premeditated. You can come in the next session and bring some of that flavor, reminding the players the rest of the world is continued while their exploits have happened in one place. Other things have happened in the other. That brings a lot of realism to the game, and it can also help give the players a sense of the importance of the choices they're making with their time, because they can't rewind the clock. I mean, usually.
Mm-hmm. This is not Majora's Mask.
Right.
We have one final question.
Well, great.
It's from...
Indeed.
What an interesting noise. It's from Matt Will Jackson. Who is that even?
He's my boy. He's my dear sweet boy.
And your
sorry,
husband, apparently.
Who I am now married to, yeah.
If D&D classes were arranged like a Pokemon chart of types, how would it look?
Man.
I mean, I have thought about this. I know nothing about Pokemon, but I think about the bifurcations of class design in D&D pretty much constantly.
So which classes are grass classes?
I think I would bifurcate along martial and magical. Mm-hmm. Like you've got your cleric, druid, warlock, wizard, sorcerer, bard on one side.
So that's like steel and fairy.
Yeah. And the Bard Saga, Steel and Fairy.
Actually, that's pretty good. I'm
really
sure
good.
there's a young adult novel in the making.
Yeah,
I would say I would arrive at Pokemon classes from D&D via Magic: The Gathering.
I'm glad you said that, Jerika. Yeah.
I thought that might appeal to Embers. Because you can sort of get some idea of sort of elemental forces in the magic colors. So like red is like fire, and like black is like dark, and like I don't know.
Well, no, you're right. You're right. Red is fire and aggression and acceleration and speed and pushing things forward as quickly as you can. Black is, from one flavor perspective, it's ghost. Yeah, it's ghost or dark.
Poison.
Yes. Poison would probably be black and blue if I had to guess.
What about the martial characters? Like, what is a Hitmonlee? Like
Fighter.
They are literally the fighter
The
type.
punch people.
The punch people.
Monk punchers, punch monkers.
Yeah. So then, if you can sort of associate your class with maybe a magic color, maybe through the lens of Ravnica, you can sort of get there in the end, right?
Oh, I'm so there. Well, I was looking at a Pokemon chart just now. Like, now I'm going to get hooked in and sucked into this question, but there are so many different Poke types, right? Like, there are more Poke types than there are classes. So you could actually take some types and group them into, like, Druid could be ground, bug, grass,
I think we're actually talking about
I've had the ground bug
subclasses or individual characters at this point, because you can have, I think Pokemon can have up to 2 types.
Yes, indeed.
Seen any that have 3, but I could be wrong. I mean, if you want to get really, really specific, you can have 3. So let's, you can imagine a very specific Druid that is the one you described.
Yeah.
So there's some good flavor in there, I think.
I would roll a grass bug Druid any day.
Even if you wanted to bring in like the racial element too, if you had a dragonborn like paladin, you could have like dragon, steel, like electric, because they're a blue.
And then they could also be like, is it evocation wizard and like call lightning down?
Yeah.
Monk, fighting, grass, flying, fairy. I don't know. Now I'm just saying all the things.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's kind of interesting inspiration, because it's like, oh, how do I fit,
I agree. That's actually my big takeaway is that actually looking at a chart and thinking about rolling a new character it's very intellectually kind of stimulating. Like, gets your curiosity going. It's cool.
Ghost princess.
Ghost fairy.
Fighter.
What would Bards? Bards would be psychic, fairy,
normal.
I don't
think you could have fairy and normal. I think they kind of cancel each other out.
This is.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think your bard is a psychic fairy, or maybe a psychic, or it could be a pure psychic. Could be a psychic dark if you want to go. If you want to go a little industrial,
College of Whispers,
goth.
Yeah.
I say normal because I believe Jigglypuff is normal, but no. I don't remember.
Jigglypuff a bard is.
Don't at me. They might be fairy. I don't remember, but they do a lot of singing. I mean, Jigglypuff's basically a bard, so.
I think it's dual. I think you're right. I think it is.
Fairy.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Category balloon.
What?
That's not a thing.
Listen,
come on now. Come on.
Type normal fairy.
Yeah.
There you go, Jerika. Weaknesses: poison, steel.
Haha.
Abilities: cute, charm, and competitive. Yep, they're a bard.
Right? They also sing you to sleep and then draw with marker on your face when you're asleep.
Nice.
Because they're angry at you for falling asleep.
I like the little bouffant hairdo.
Yeah, it's cute.
I'm learning a lot about Pokemon tonight.
In a way, you've been playing Pokemon all along.
How about rock though for Bard?
Oh,
Rock Fairy?
see what you did there. Yeah, Rock Fairy is actually
Dark rock.
Yes.
Gonna melt your face off.
Steel rock. I could
We could
see
just
a bard
keep
like
saying
that.
Pokemon types. Yes.
Anyway.
All right. I feel we have successfully merged Pokemon and dragons together.
And dungeons
and
as well.
mons. Yeah.
Sounds good. It was a fabulous mind exercise.
I know my mind is looking pretty swole.
We need to get you to a doctor immediately.
Let's do that very quickly. An outro.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Insight Check. You can find us on Twitter at Insight Check Pod. Write us, ask us questions, comment on what your player character's Pokemon would be, and what their favorite song or playlist would be. Thank you also for posting cues in our Discord. It literally made this episode possible. We love it when folks come in, interact, ask questions, shoot the proverbial stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to work on my language, and it's really a great place, and we love you all in it. And if you'd like to spend more time with the Inside Check Pod team, find us there and in the podcast notes.
I just wanted to say that we just passed 400 followers on our Twitter, and we feel that checker love, and we send it back to checkers. We love you. Thanks for listening to us talk about stuff.
And if you've enjoyed what you've heard today on this here podcast, please stop by and leave a comment and a positive rating on iTunes or wherever else you go to get this stuff to your ear holes. We'd also like to thank Binswept for our theme music called Never Stand Alone, and the stellar, eternal Amy T. Falcone for our adorable faces, which are far better than our real faces. Thank you, Amy.
It's true.
And answering your cues from our collective A's, this
Was
Insight.
Check.
check.
Whoa. The held note just.
Sorry for everyone who hates The Ring, apparently, or The Grudge. Apparently, that's a terrible noise that is in that. Okay, great. Bye.
Chickity check.
Recording now, I'm recording now. Can you hear me recording? I'm recording now.
Ba-bum, ba-bum.
Do 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 do.
Recording now.
Recording.
Yeah, just give Jay the Easter egg right off the hop. He doesn't even need to work for
Jay's
it.
gonna miss all this because it's gonna be before the clap.
That's true. Pre-clap does not even exist in the Jay world.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.